Right. Thanks very much for listening to the ground investigation project. I'm going to be the host, Michael Taylor. And here we have our first ever guest, Brock Yordy from the States. How are you doing, Brock?
I am doing great. Thanks for having me on your inaugural episode of the Ground Investigation Podcast.
Thank you very
This is
much.
very cool.
Yeah.
Our industry loves this stuff, from
Yes.
stocking caps to ball caps
Uh-huh.
to across the pond.
Yeah,
We love discovering the unknown.
we do. And there's certainly a few more podcasts that have sprung up now as well, which some of them are really quite good and interesting. Probably more on the technical side, I would say, but it's good to have a listen, and find out a lot about the technical side of our industry as well. So I was wondering if you could just introduce yourself and tell us sort of your experience and your background, Brock.
Excellent. So I'm Brock Yordy. I am from the United States. Michigan is where I live right now. I've
Okay.
been in the drilling industry my entire life.
Okay.
My father owned a drilling company,
Okay.
and then I went to the university and studied, groundwater science, geoscience.
Yes.
I went to work for Bayreuth Industrial Drilling Products, Halliburton, learning
Yes.
drilling fluids engineering.
Okay.
From there, I worked in various industrial drilling all over the world. I have had the opportunity to work for rig manufacturers in the United States, one called
Hmm.
LabCorp, who makes a
Okay.
VersaDrill. The
Okay.
other would be Georgie Failing, which is one of the oldest rig manufacturers in the world.
Okay.
Um, I currently work for Suez North America, who has just been bought by Veolia.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
that is my current job. I have trained the United States military to drill water in Afghanistan, Iraq, Jordan, Africa, Latin America. I've worked
Yeah.
mining projects all over the world. I write for the Driller magazine, thedriller.com. I host a podcast called Drillercast and Drilling Insight. And
Hmm.
I love everything about the industry and promoting the industry and getting to talk about some of the most fun and exciting. Nothing in this world happens without drilling first. We
Yes. Yeah.
discover the unknown, we
Yeah.
give it to the rest of the world. If
Yeah.
it's resources, if it's water, if it's information, if it's discovering the unknown, it starts right here.
Okay.
Civilization doesn't progress without us.
No, that's a good statement, and it certainly does it. No sort of civil engineering projects would be up and running, not successfully anyway. They tend to go wrong, don't they, when they don't have the drilling done, or when they skimp on the drilling because they've got a short budget, or some people, they don't have any care for the ground investigations, really, do they? It's just a box to tick to get it out the way with. But if you're too quick to tick that box and you don't spend enough money, then things go wrong, and it's usually much costlier later on.
I completely agree. And I think we've seen it around the world. I've always wondered how the Greeks and early civilization did things without,
Yeah.
the investigations that we're able to do today.
Yes. Yes. They seem to have done it relatively successfully as well. So I've no idea. Maybe we should find one and ask one. But so I noticed I was looking for your LinkedIn profile. So when you were at university, then you've done some sort of theatrical productions there. Is that just while you were going through?
No, so I always enjoyed being part of a collaboration or a production. And
Okay.
ironically enough, if it's an oil and gas well or a mining project or whatnot, somewhere along the way, there's always some sort of fine art, somebody that can think outside the box, somebody
Okay.
that's insanely creative. If it's thinking or imagining downhole three-dimensionally, it's
Yeah.
I think we can use our right brain and left brain. And you're absolutely right. I studied directing, film and stage, and
Yeah.
theater production. And I believe for Europe and Asia, I think it's more widely accepted. In the States, it's like what do you mean you were one of those theater kids?
Yeah, yeah,
But let's think about it. In a drilling project, you have a scientist and a engineer and a hydrologist and a geologist and an owner and drillers who are their own beast of their own, and a owner and equipment. And if there's not a bigger production than that, and so my directing degree taught me that I need to be able to communicate with a sound designer and a
yeah,
scenic designer and a costumer, no different than our projects here. The thing is the audience can see everything that happens in a theater production. Everything that happens for us is subsurface, and
yeah,
we have to just explain, paint that picture. So
yeah,
there's a lot of parallels that don't
yeah, yeah.
really. I'm sure there's a driller or an engineer right now going, what, why would you bring up, for your
Yeah.
first podcast? But at the end of the day,
Yeah.
it's about collaborating together. And I think I think everybody in this industry or in corporate work should have to take a theater class.
Yeah, it's not a bad idea, especially for the communication and sort of resolving things in an imaginative way. So yeah, I can see a parallel there. So you maybe advise some of the drillers in the UK to go and do maybe a theatrical class and become a better driller.
Maybe.
Maybe we'll see. If anyone's going to do that now, please let us know. Excellent. Okay, dokie. So in terms of drilling, then, so you're a hands-on driller yourself, or was it? Yeah. And what was your? Go on.
So absolutely, I drilled water wells. I drilled geothermal.
Okay.
Cathodic protection, deep well anode beds. I've done micro piles. I've done caisson work. I've been part of tunneling projects.
Okay.
I have run the controls on a lot of different pieces of equipment. And when you're a mud engineer in the industrial drilling side outside of oil and gas, there's plenty of opportunities to be on a wide range of, from infrastructure to water to, energy.
So when you say
it's
go on. So when you say industrial, you mean sort of geotechnical things of that nature?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So I've definitely been on projects where we've installed monitoring wells, and I've been on projects that we've been looking at blow counts and everything to do with understanding what we get, to looking at cores and understanding how important it is for us to get that couple meters of core out. And really be excited when we get that entire return, and look at the gentleman or the lady to the right of me and them be super excited, and for us to giggle together about how cool it is what we just brought out of the earth.
Yes, definitely. And all the history that's come along with it. With it's quite amazing. You can drill into hundreds of millions of years old, sort of geology, bring out fossils, bring out all sort of mineralizations. It's an interesting trade to sort of be in. So how much sort of geotechnical experience do you have yourself?
It's depended on the projects I've been brought into. Generally, when I get brought into a geotechnical project, it's because we've had poor recovery, or we're having issues drilling a formation. And then I will be that outside of the box guy that comes in, and we come up with alternative methods for retrieval. If it's bringing in sonic, if it's looking at a different rig, the adage is, we have to get the information we need.
Yes.
What is it going to take to do it? And sometimes it comes back to, how much is that going to cost, and what tool do we need? So if it's easy, I'm generally not the guy they call and say, hey, will you come help us today?
No. Okay. So it's basically issues getting through the formation, and so then you arrive, and so you maybe put a sonic rig on there, that sort of thing. Is a sonic rig's quite popular in America? They've had a sort of a bit of a boom really in the UK for the last 5 years, maybe more. It's certainly, I mean, it's mostly still just the rotary rig, but Sonic's certainly becoming a lot more popular at the moment.
You know, I truly believe we have a big future in Sonic.
Yeah.
And we're a slow industry to adopt things.
Yeah. Yeah.
So like Sonic now is at least 25, if not 30 years old. And everything that we talked about from maintenance and usability and those type of pieces have now become much more effective and efficient. And you look at the things that, you know, IGLCamp can do, or GeoProbe, or Frosty, or Terrasonic. You some of the technology we have now is just insane. And the 150 hertz technology coming out, the larger diameters, the deeper we can go. You know, in the States, and I haven't followed much in Europe with this, but man, Yellow Jacket and Cascade in the United States have been, you know, 300-400 meters, or you know, have cased to a point and have drilled to 1,000 feet. You know, I'm that dumb American that works really in standard a lot more than I do.
Yeah, that's fine.
In your system, but obviously the most available tool is the right tool for the job if we can get it done. It just takes time and the right operator. But boy, some of the things we can do without really our disruptive drilling process, you know, we do a lot of damage in our discovery of the unknown. And when you look at what we can do with some of this surgical stuff, or being like a laser, it's a game changer. And you know, that's we need to adopt it. We need to be investing more into it, where we can really get the best results. But again, rotary, it's widely accepted around the world, and we can sometimes fix it with a paper clip and, you know,
that's it. But most of them are rotary in the UK. Like I say, there are some Sonic. Some of the bigger companies are buying some more rigs, 4 or 5 rigs at a time. But it's still, as far as I'm aware, it's still very few. There's still a bit of pushback because of the costs, the costs for the rigs. You know, it's some of them are sort of a couple of thousand a day, whereas the sort of the standard rotary could be sort of 12, 1,500, something like that. So there's always a bit of pushback from clients, I think, at this current time. But I do think it's getting a little bit better, and and I do think there'll be a big future for Sonic. Certainly, I'm actually doing a podcast with someone later on today, and he's a big fan of Sonic. Big fan of Sonic drilling. Just bought a new one. He's also he's into sort of drilling hydrothermal and water wells as well. So he's a big fan of it. Big fan of it, definitely. So go on.
Oh, I'm sorry. One last thing on Sonic. I see it as no different than the medical industry for us. We hear stories about in the 80s and the 90s how back surgery was performed, or how heart surgery was performed. And then at the 21st century, we talk about, oh yeah, they put this stent in through, you know, an artery in my leg, or, you know, they were able to fuse my spine with 3 little drill points in the middle of the lower back. That's Sonic versus rotary. Do we want a giant saw, you know, cutting into something, or is there a better way? And with that, we will see better rotary methods as well. It's just, how do we adopt the progression?
Yeah, definitely. So there's a big push there. There's a bit of a push here as well. Sort of going on from there to the big sort of coronavirus pandemic that's swept through and still sweeping through the world. How did that affect the sort of drilling at the time and the sort of general industry at the time? I mean, obviously in the UK it stopped it for a while, but the drillers were still doing a fair bit of drilling. Really, it was more the engineering that was sort of slowing down. How did it affect you guys?
I think that's an a very astute way of putting it. The drillers, the men and women that are in the field, that their solution to anything is just a bigger hammer.
Yeah.
You know, they believed, you know, it was a cold. They believed, you know, I can't get this. We obviously we put great, you know, hygiene and sanitation protocols in place, but you know, it was contagious. And I think about working Latin America or the Asia Pacific in my late 20s, early 30s, and walking through the airport and going, what could have affected those folks so bad that they want to walk through the airport in a mask, right?
Yeah,
because I was just this dumb American that was like, why? What could have scared them so bad? And then it shook me up. You know, my father passed away from COVID in August this year.
Yeah, I've seen that. Condolences.
Thank you. So, you know, I think because drilling is such a high risk with acceptable risks, and I don't think anybody should be in danger. But I truly believe many of the crews that I worked with throughout North America, you know, they're outside. They could, you know, social distance a bit, but they just went with it. They went with it, and our scientific community, our engineers, our geoscientists, those, you know, could see more of the data. You know, it's that dichotomy. You got somebody that is working on gut instincts and navigating what's happening in the subsurface versus a community that is very based on fact, science, books, statistics. And I think with that allows us to look at risk in different ways. Luckily, all the crews that I was working with, from the Bahamas to the Southeast and Florida and Georgia and Alabama, which were very Wild West cowboyish states when it came to COVID, we didn't have any bad situations. And, you know, supply chain, being able to get, you know, it was more about, we had issues with getting stainless steel screens and those type of situations that came up that impacted us more than the actual virus.
Yeah, the whole supply chain. I think it affected everyone, didn't it, worldwide? You see with so even affected Tesla cars, which you know, they're usually the last ones to be affected, but I think Elon sorted it out in the end. But yeah, I mean, everyone's been affected by the supply, you know, supply manufacturing the things. So yeah, it's been a big issue. It had obviously had a large financial impact. It did kill the sort of ground investigation industry for a while, but since then, since probably 4, 5, 6 months afterwards, maybe a bit more, it's booming now in terms of, so I work for you know, a ground investigation recruitment company. So we recruit engineers mostly, but drillers as well. And now everyone wants to take someone on at the moment. I don't know if that's mirrored over there in the States.
Yeah. Well, it's twofold with our infrastructure bill happening right now.
Yes,
you know, we're pushing, and we have a big age gap. The same as, I would say, as I've traveled the world, we all have a big age gap of, I'm 41 and I'm still the kid of the industry.
Yeah.
And you know, it's odd that you bring this up on, you know, us progressing on. I blame the United States, North America age gap on 20 years ago, 9/11 and the war on terror. We had a lot of good men and women who joined the armed services and went to fight. And so we now have this new generation that wants to come work. They're very excited to be in the drilling industry and the science industry.
Yeah.
And suddenly now we have this, you know, global event happening again, that if it escalates, you know, we will have a lot of young men and women volunteering and wanting to be part of, you know, preventing another terror happening. So, you know, we come out of this pandemic, we're ready to ramp up and build a lot of the infrastructure that's failing in the States.
Yeah.
And suddenly there could be a quick, divergence of, do I help build roads, or do I go and help democracy? Do I?
Yes. Yeah. So you referred to sort of Russia and Ukraine, then what's sort of going on there? Yeah. It does seem to be like we're just kind of getting back on our feet, and then there's a distraction here now, which could be very costly for lives, money, and everything else. So yeah, it's a sad state of affairs, really, isn't it?
It is, but it will definitely halt some of the drilling projects we expected to happen.
Yeah.
In many places, no different than when COVID slowed down investigation. Mm-hmm. It was, well, what do the next 18 months have to,
Yeah. We've had some of our large, so I don't know if there's a project, High Speed 2 in the UK, that's sort of a fast railway track, sort of from London to the sort of Midlands. And then it's supposed to be going up further north as well. So that, HS3, so that's been cancelled now, though. That's been canned. And that was quite a lot of work for our industry. So there's a lot of people going, some of the larger projects, which always need contract engineers, etc., has now been knocked on the head, actually. But yeah,
it's I think drilling for the unknown and discovering that stuff is tough enough for our industry. To throw in these type of global events, if it's a pandemic or another war in Europe, is just quite difficult when we're such a progressed, civilization at this point.
Yeah.
So
yeah, definitely. So I was wondering if I could take you to sort of driller training. So here in the UK, I would say most of it is on the job. There are a few larger companies who have like a drilling academy and put you through that for sort of 6 months and make sure you sort of, really know what you're doing. But how is it in the United States? Is training, is that an important part of drilling in the United States?
So we call drilling in the United States tribal. It's tribal and self-taught, and not from a Native American standpoint, but that you have your own tribes and ways of doing things.
Yes.
Our best resource for training is in Ontario, Canada, and it's the Sir Sanford Fleming College of Resource Drilling. And those guys do a phenomenal job. Some of the big companies have training programs. We have a problem with how we do the training, though, because over the years it's been, I'm the driller. It takes me 20 years to become a great driller. It should take you 20 years to become a great driller.
Okay.
And with the rest of our learning process as young adults, we've gone from, a generation that was 8-track tapes, records, tapes, CDs, to CDs, streaming, digital music. Our new generation has all the information they need at the palm of their hands. Yeah. And so to tell them it's going to take them 20 years, when we look at a drill rig that is newer and responsive and has electric over hydraulic controls and much more response to it, on top of online learning, articles that you can get from many different industries, all the trade shows, podcasts like you're doing right here. The learning curve doesn't have to be that long. When I train the US military, and they deploy with V2000 80,000 pound machines into Afghanistan, or 50,000 pound machines that they put into airplanes and land, the Air Force uses 50Ks. In 6 weeks, we have competent drillers. Now, the military, no different than the Royal Engineers, have discipline. And we've always, in drilling, we have that test pilot mentality of it's much about being responsive, feeling what's happening on the platform and in the controls. And that instinct does take time.
Yes.
But I believe the fundamentals, the core competencies of everything can be taught. And then we can start teaching them how to be responsive. And with the rigs the way they are today, and this is a very taboo for many drillers, where no matter where I've been, somebody has stood up and said, I've been drilling, 1.5 times longer than you've been alive, kid.
Yes.
And why the hell do you think
Yeah.
this is the mentality? But
yeah,
we're out of time.
it
Global
is.
water crisis
Yeah.
being 20 years away, we need as many young men and women inspired and excited to do it. And that's not by shoveling pits and, picking up augers.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree. It's I don't know what the pay is like in the US when they're sort of starting. Obviously, it's not too high here, and it does take a sort of certain character to want to be outside, and it's a very hard working job. You work for all weathers, whether you get it's too much sun, it's rain, frost, and anything. So it does sort of take a certain character to get through that training, be to stay in drilling. I think be consistent.
I 100% agree. And I think it comes back to purpose. And right now, building civilization, looking for water, pulling resources out of the ground, all of those aspects is what is going to get Gen Z or Gen Alpha inspired. It's not about you get to work outside and you get to work with, Ted, the driller that may yell at you all day or not. But it's very much about the purpose of, I'm too fat to be an astronaut. So the next best thing to me is getting to discover the unknown on a drilling project.
Yeah, that's it. It's just beneath your feet as well. So nowhere near the cost, is it?
Right.
So when you say about purpose, so you can have the geotechnical, where you sort of drilling, maybe have a bridge put over there, which will help, a city get there, help the infrastructure. But surely one of the most rewarding, in my mind, must be sort of water well drilling. Is that right? To sort of tap into a water supply for people that desperately need just, to drink water, has to be one of the most rewarding things, surely.
It is. And ironically enough, it doesn't even have to be a water-stricken area. It just has to be understanding that it's a community supply well, or it's a well for a home. I think that moment that you see that production water come out and then you watch it clear up and you see the capacity and the yield, and you realize at this point, if I've constructed this right for the next 40, 50 years, or if it's a new engineered municipal well, the next 80 to 100 years, this is water that is impacting everybody it touches.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. One of the most basic requirements, really, isn't it? Water. So has that been sort of some of the more interesting projects you've been on? Would that be water? Or what are some of your more interesting projects and any sort of issues that you've had to overcome?
The most fun and rewarding project I was on was in the Atacama Desert in southern Peru, one of the driest places in the world. And we helped develop a solids control unit for mining. It was a gold mining operation, and it made it so we could do zero discharge drilling. So we reduced the water consumption to drill, say, a 400-meter wireline coring hole to get core recovery for this gold mine. We reduced the water by 80%.
Okay.
Which 100% impacted the local villages around there from the amount of water that the mining company had been pulling, the water that had been trucking in, and the fact that we were able to be better stewards and neighbors. And so it did completely turn into, how we impacted everything that happened there. Because, in some places in Latin America, the resources were a higher priority than, say, the locals in the area. Beyond that, getting to work on the water projects for the Syrian refugees in Jordan, where we were helping produce water specifically for the camps that had been put in place
Yeah.
with U.S. Air Force. That was great. Yes. If it's been Africa or Central America,
Hmm.
those areas that we've had those water rationing situations have always been one of those. They're tough. Again, when you step in and you see if it's the UN or the United States military or a humanitarian group coming in to do a water well, they didn't hire a local drilling company because the local drilling companies got out.
Yeah.
It wasn't
Yeah.
easy to get water or profitable to get water. Therefore, why would we stay and be a business? Or it
Okay.
would be so exuberant amount of money. So then looking at, are we going to drill the first 400 meters on air hammer, and then we're going to switch to reverse air? Or are we going to dual rotary this hole? It was 100% looking and asking the drilling community, okay, if money need water here, what experts, who thinks we can do this? So this is the log we have. This is the objective. And industry is so awesome at just coming together and suggesting scenarios and situations and alternatives and troubleshooting to achieve what's not achievable. I think from a engineering or science standpoint, if you tell a driller, you can't do that, that's not possible, you'll come in the following morning and they will have somehow defied physics and reality. And you're like, how do you do that? Do you have a magic,
Yeah.
magic genie back there asking? Yeah.
Stubbornness can work well, can't it? I always find myself, I always have the most motivation if someone says no, or it can't be done, or something similar. That's the time, like, no, can't it? That's the time it gets me fired up. If people agree, it's kind of not that interested in, is it? But if they say no, it's certainly a little bit more interesting to sort of have a go at. So in relation to, you're saying sort of reduce the water consumption by 8% for the gold mine, could you just run a sort of a layman's terms, really, how that was done?
So it was a lot more back to basics than we would have thought. Wireline coring creates, very fine solids with the diamond core bit. Mm-hmm. So we had a drilling fluid that was coming up, that started with a specific gravity of 1 and went to, 1.01, 1.02, which isn't in any other drilling application heavy. But in that, it continues to build. And then you end up losing core recovery and mud rings. So we built a machine that had desilters, hydrocyclones, that could remove those solids. The problem with hydrocyclones is they're basically an 80-20 cut. So you get 80% clean drilling fluids, and you have 20% concentrated solids that is a waste. And that's going to pump on the ground. And let's just say for 25 gallons a minute that it's running, you're going to have, 15, 16 gallons a minute that's clean. And you're going to have somewhere between 7 and 9 gallons that's waste.
Okay.
If you're running that, 3 hours straight, you can see how much waste you've produced. Mm-hmm. We could capture that waste, and we were using a spray that essentially helped turn that waste material into a 2-part. We had concentrated solids, and then we had what looked like clear water, but it was an effluent that you could rebuild into a new mud. So basically, we could clean, and we could do this with any concentrated solid drilling fluid. You could turn it into a clear water, clear effluent that had solids that fell out to the bottom. And we were using flocculants and coagulants to do that.
Okay.
The big problem with that is that science requires some sort of chemical reaction that's like a cationic. And you
Mhm.
said to make this layman, and I'm not doing a good job
No.
at all. But basically, we could create a clear, what looked like a clear water that was an effluent that still had a bad component to it, but bentonite
Mhm.
would render it inert.
Okay.
And that was the big piece of it. And we've done it in construction and caisson, but it needed to be as simple. We couldn't have big centrifuges. We couldn't have big, anything that would be big and complex. You can't mobilize very easily.
Mhm.
And two, it needed to be something that was simple enough that we could train people who cannot read, people who, all they know is drilling. All they know is
Okay.
construction as
Yeah.
as a task. And it just happened to be, we didn't steal, but we applied science from the oil field that was
Okay.
25 years ago, cutting edge, but 25 years later had become reasonably priced because everybody had used it and moved on. We look at how they drill in the North Sea right now and all the technology they have. And we should just say, 15 more years and you guys will be sick of this and we can use it anywhere
Yeah.
on land, because they'll have made it cheap enough. And that's really, as we progress, it's how we need to look at it. What is the technology that we can apply that will happen next? And that's how we did it.
Okay.
My very first article with the Driller magazine in 2013 was on that thing. So if any folks want to go to thedriller.com,
Yeah.
you search Brock Yordy. If you look at you go to the very last page of all the articles I've written, you will come across it's called System 360, and it worked quite elegantly for as simple of a system as it was.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, for anyone wanted to, to look at Brock, we'll put in all the sort of links to the podcasts, which you are doing a few at the moment on your magazine. So you must be very busy doing all of this and your sort of current role as well.
Yeah, and I'd love to have you on Drillercast at some point.
Yes, definitely. I'm not sure technically how much I know anything, anywhere near you yourself, but I'd be happy to come on and have a chat with yourself at any point. So if we could ask another question, which was really just about sort of drillers who are just sort of starting up, really. As you have so much experience yourself, just wondering if there's any sort of advice you could sort of impart to sort of a young driller just sort of starting out, maybe sort of geotechnical water well drilling.
The best advice I got as a young driller and then young mud engineer, and we've lost this somewhere along the way with smartphones, comes to, if it isn't written down, it never happened. So have that yellow notebook, that whatever waterproof, write in the rain notebook on the rig. Be as astute as possible. Any changes, I'm a big Marvel fan, so I call it my spidey sense. But when my spidey sense tingles, I write those things down. And I wait for that scientist to come back or that engineer to come back and collaborate with them, but open that notebook and show that the entire time this has been happening, that my tribal knowledge has been documented. And then it stops being tribal knowledge. It becomes documented knowledge that you can share and learn and build upon. And that's the reason our industry hasn't progressed from a driller standpoint versus an academic standpoint enough, is the fact that we keep everything right here and right here. And the only way we can be better collaborators with our scientists and engineers is to be able to be the book. And in order to be the book, we got to show that we're writing the book down. So it's not like, did you just make that up? Yeah. Maybe.
It sounds like a new project for you there, Brock, to write a book about it as well. I'm sure you could do that. You speak to enough drillers. That'd be fantastic. So you say, so just be astute, write things down, because you're right. It's what the engineers do. They won't just say it, they'll send it in an email. So if you say later on, no, and say, look at your email, yeah, oh, okay. But there's no way out of it, really, is there? After that point, it's documented. It's documented down. Do you think? I mean, I'm not sure whether the drillers are particularly, go out their way to read many sort of books, etc. But there are a few good drilling books out there. Would you any that you'd recommend at all?
Absolutely. Obviously, we have the reference books. I believe right now we got some really great information if it's out of the National Drilling Association or the IADC, which is the oil and gas, or the driller. Most of the articles I write are on developing as a driller or leadership on a job site, but actual published books, the one that excites me the most right now from a water well standpoint is called The Art of Water Wells by Marvin Glockfelty, who is a hell of an hydrogeologist. The Australian Drilling Manual is invaluable. It's, I believe Australia has done a really good job of developing drillers and staying safe. And I think part of that is because they're so remote that if you're not safe, you're probably dead.
Yes. Not many ways out of it, really, if you're that far remote.
And then from a solids control standpoint, there's a solids control handling handbook. It's, if you Google solids control, there's like one. But really, the groundwater and wells book has always been great. The hydrology book has always been a good reference, but Australian Drilling Manual does a good job of speaking to drillers. And Marvin's new book, Art of Water Wells, talks a lot about communication and navigating a project versus just being, and I think it applies 100% to geotechnical and environmental as it does water well. But beyond that, there's so many resources out there for drilling right now that question everything. That's, from a new driller standpoint, or even a competent driller standpoint, that we can Google things that we couldn't before. So it's very much, it's there. It's in our hands.
It is.
Ask why.
That's it. If you have a question, there's no reason you can't just take to your phone and have that question, answered most of the time. If it's overly technical, you have to search a little bit longer, but it's out there somewhere. Someone will know. Or I suppose you can even, chat to some fellow drillers, some people that have been in the industry a bit longer, and sort of gain some advice, listening to the podcast, etc. as well. Would be a good idea. So how in your say, so how does the engineer sort of get along with the geotechnical driller?
It's all over the board. You have the ones that are super excited to be on the back of the rig, that want to ask if they can pull the levers. And then you have the ones that are highly academic and have spent a lot of time applying the science, but now are fearful of looking ignorant in front of the driller. But ironically enough, and in the States, when you're going from like primary school to just before, the final chapters of being in, school, you have these dances that you end up at. And I joke about this often, but it's very much, if you think of you as a driller, or you as an engineer, and you don't have a boyfriend or a girlfriend, and you're going to that first dance of some sort, and all the boys are on one side and all the girls are on the other side, and everybody's looking at each other and giggling, but won't come to the middle of the floor and dance. I think that's absolutely what we get into. We get too much into our head. We need to check our egos. And we just need to ask good questions. It's not appropriate for the driller to say, you stand over there until it's time for me to ask for you to come up. And it's not appropriate for the engineer to say, I think you're doing it wrong. I think we just have to default to trust. actually the best book I would say read right now. Malcolm Gladwell writes a book called Talking with Strangers.
Okay.
And it's an excellent audiobook, but it is 100% about understanding where the person you're talking to is coming from at that moment. And with this pandemic and a
Yeah.
war and everything happening, or a smartphone that texts you and says, grandmama has just went to the hospital with chest pains. We don't know where anybody is coming from. And it's not 1995 where you just had a pager or something. You had no idea what was going on.
Yeah.
So when somebody asks a question, instead of getting defensive, we just take a breath and we say, okay,
Yes.
now mind you, on both sides, we have people that are turds, and we always will.
Of course.
But I think as an industry, we progress by understanding we're discovering unknown together. I know I probably got on a soapbox there, but I've had great experiences, and I've had experiences where I went, wait, so I'm sorry I didn't go on and finish a master's degree, but I've just spent the last 15 years of my career doing a master's degree in the field. And I promise you, I'm not here to bullshit you. I'm here to help you get through.
Yeah, that's it. No one goes out of the way to have conflicts, because everyone likes a happy team is a better team. So no conflicts usually. But again, like you say, there are tales on both sides, and I've seen them myself. So hopefully it's not too many there. And and especially someone in a leadership position, they especially cannot be that person, because then it's very, very hard to keep things on track and to keep things civil if the person who's leading is one of the worst ones, really, the ones that should be kind of cut out of that team, unfortunately.
Yeah, our stakes are very high on both sides, from running the controls and realizing the deeper we get, the more problems that can happen. Obviously, there's a hyper focus on the nuances that are happening downhole.
Yeah.
And at the same time, the science community is so fearful that we're going to miss something, because there's all of this tribal test pilot cowboyism of how we're running the controls and getting through things, that we're on high alert. But if we think of it more of, we're going in to do brain surgery, we need to all cooperate. Mother Nature's not going to cooperate, but the two individuals that are there need to be working together if we want to be successful.
Yeah, definitely. Right. So I suppose another thing to ask, I suppose, it's a bit more about yourself, really. What's your plans, really, sort of in the industry over the next sort of 5 or 10 years, and with what you're doing in your life at the moment?
Writing a book is on the horizon.
Okay. Is this a drilling book?
It will be. The first one will be a drilling book. The next one will be on leadership.
Nice.
I feel we got a lot of great leadership books out there. I think we got a lot of great drilling books out there, but I think we have some more perspectives. And I've had some great mentors, and I really want to pass on their knowledge.
Yes. Yeah, mentors are particularly important, aren't they, really? Because even in a company as well, if the company maybe pays the driller better, but there's no one to really help lead them and mentor them, then at some point we're going to become a cropper to things, and we're better off sort of moving on and finding someone who is a decent mentor, which is usually another driller out there in the field with them, or one of their friends that they've worked with previously, I think. But yeah, that's definitely quite an important thing, I would say. So what about yourself personally then? Do you have any sort of big ambitions apart from the writing the book at all?
My big ambition is to continue to promote this industry.
Okay.
Continue to I have a 3 and a 5-year-old.
Oh,
so
right, okay.
I'm 41 with a 3 and a 5-year-old, because I spent the first as an adult traveling the world, and I would not take back learning this drilling community around the world. And so I have a 3 and a 5-year-old. They both want to be in this industry. The global water crisis is going to be a big component. So I want to be there. I want to help wherever I can. and then to continue to share. I think the big thing that our industry could do better is sharing, and you creating this podcast is a wonderful aspect of where I believe we consume knowledge now, is to be able
Yes.
to listen to somebody versus, looking at the print on paper. So sharing knowledge, inspiring, and getting to take my kids with me around the world is a big deal, like you're doing right now.
Yes, definitely. Well, we've only just started traveling, really. We didn't do much beforehand. I think the furthest place we'd been, which was just a short holiday, was 400 or 500 miles away. So yes, now that we're here in Thailand, definitely big culture shock, but that's why we arrived. That's why we came here, really. But yeah, it's doing the kids some good to go and see sort of different cultures. Everything's everything's kind of a challenge on one side, and kind of a unique learning experience, whether that's just from ordering food, from trying to work out, to get something across to someone, using Google Translate, mimicking sort of things. It's yeah, it's definitely good for the kids, and good for us to just be out of the day to day, really, the day to day of being back in the UK. Definitely. Right. Well, I think that brings us to pretty much the end of the podcast, Brock. Thank you very much for coming on. You've imparted lots of wisdom, some of it, particularly good, and I'll have to go and look up, I think. So it's been very good sort of technically as well. So thanks very much for your time today, and I very much look forward to coming on your podcast sometime soon.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me on. And I think what you're doing is awesome. And I hope you produce 50, 100 of these. And next thing you're looking back and going, wow, this first one that I put together. And as you go, wait, what's going on with your background, Brock? I have done 37 with DrillerCast and 40 with Drilling Insight. And I have a leadership one as well. And it's addicting. It's fun getting to share. And that moment somebody texts or reaches out and says, hey, what you just said on this last podcast was really insightful and fun. Or when you get the guy that writes back and goes, you should stop now because of these 5 reasons you're wrong. Both of them feel pretty good. And one of them I drink a pint and I laugh at, and the other one I text back and I say, thank you so much for listening.
Yes, definitely. That's it. Well, you've encouraged them both to get in touch, I suppose. So it works either way. But thanks very much for coming on. But yeah, feel free, anyone listening or even watching this, feel free to go and look up Brock and his podcasts and his magazine articles as well. I'll put a link in the comments, whichever platform this will be on at the time. But again, thank you very much, Brock. And yeah, it's fantastic to have spoken and to have met you today.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you very much.